Thanks for streaming in here on Bird 365. Your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald, John McMullen. We're hanging, talking birds. The draft is getting close. We're going to bring in our next guest because he's surely got opinions on how the draft looks for the Eagles right now, some 3 weeks away. Yes, we have the McMullen Media Mafia on the stream. This is the Malton Mafia joining forces.
That's right.
Both yours truly and Jimmy Kempski of PhillyVoice.com are Malton guys. JK, how you been?
I'm good. I actually used to mow my parents' lawn in Marlton when you and your other Mac partner were on the air back in the day on my Walkman.
A Walkman. All right. Nice reference. Yes.
Appreciate you getting on board with us. All right. No, you put up your latest Eagles-only mock draft before we talk about specific players. Okay. How tough is that? Because
it's easy.
You think it is easy?
Yeah. So I try to keep up with the college players throughout the entire season. So like each Saturday during the regular football season, I'll just kind of highlight 5 guys that I think might make sense for the Eagles in the next draft. So I kind of have an idea of players who would make sense at every position. And then as far as putting those together, it's just, all right, this guy is rated by most people around the first round. This guy is rated by most people around the second round, third round, and then I just kind of marry up those players with positions of need and so on.
Now, Jimmy, though, when you went with Jalen Waddle, so tell people that with the 12th overall pick in the first round. So just from that standpoint, we've been talking about a lot of value of position, and obviously wide receiver has traditionally not been a high value target for the Eagles. But if you do go wide receiver at 12, as you did, you went Greg Newsome at corner in the second round. How do you juggle that? Is that, if you go corner JC Horn, then you're probably going to go the wide receiver in the second round. Is that fair?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't even think Waddle's is even going to be there. Yeah. So like, I won't repeat guys. This was my mock draft 4.0. Yeah. I think it's more likely that Devontae Smith will be there of the top 3 wide receivers that are available. But your point is a good one in that you got to kind of look at like, okay, what's the combination that's going to give you the 2 best players? Is it wide receiver first round and cornerback second round, or is it cornerback first round and wide receiver second round? Because I do think that last year's wide receiver class was widely regarded as one of the best ever. And then this year, I think, is right up there with it. So I think you're going to find that there's going to be plenty of wide receivers in the second round that could be there, like, for example, a Terrace Marshall from LSU or Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. So you're going to have guys that fall into the second round. So your point is very good. Like, I do think that JC Horn certainly, I don't think Patrick Surtain is going to make it to 12. I think probably his floor is probably the Dallas Cowboys, who I think are at 10. So if JC Horn is still there, I do like him as a player. And if you can get him, and then it doesn't even have to be a wide receiver necessarily the second round either. You can get someone later as well. But I mean, they're one weird, I wouldn't call this an advantage because it's not, but one weird advantage, at least in terms of the picking players for the Eagles, is that they have holes everywhere. So it doesn't matter what position they pick, they're going to be filling some kind of need.
It's both good and bad when you have a lot of positions to need. Bad is you got to fill them. Good is that you can't screw it up because you have a lot of different ways to go. Let me ask you about one particular player you just mentioned, Devonta Smith. You actually think there's a possibility he could drop down to number 12 and be available for the Eagles? Yeah, what more does the guy have to do than win the Heisman Trophy to not be picked in the top 10 in the NFL draft? I know he's not Megatron Part 2. He's not the biggest, strongest guy on the face of the planet. All he does is, I think it was a guy by the name of Chris Carter, who they used to say this about. That's right. All he does is score touchdowns. Yes, I kind of like those type of players. Don't get me wrong. I'd be ecstatic if the Eagles call his name on draft day for all the Eagles fans. He can't really drop down to number 12, can he?
Well, you look at the draft order and the teams that are picking ahead of the Eagles, and if those top 3 receivers, if any one of them make it past pick number 7, you don't have teams with wide receiver needs thereafter. So 8, you have Carolina, they're fine at receiver. You have Denver at 9. They have Sutton and Judy and Hamler. who they just drafted. Cowboys at 10, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Michael Gallup, you have Amari Cooper, and then 11, you have the Giants, who just paid big time money to Kenny Golladay, who they already have Sterling Shepard, and they have Darius Slayton. So they're all stacked at wide receiver. They get past that 7th pick. One of them gets past that 7th pick, which is the Lions, and then they have a need at wide receiver for sure. The Dolphins before them at 6 kind of have a need at receiver, not as bad off as the Lions or the Eagles. They could go receiver. The Bengals, I think most people think, are either going to go offensive tackle or Jamar Chase. Personally, I think they're going to go Jamar Chase. So if one of those guys gets past 7, I think they're going to last until 12. And then even if you look past the Eagles pick at 12, what is it? The Chargers are 13. They're not a good candidate to move up. Like if an offensive tackle is available for them, like I think that'd be the move up for them. 14, who is it, John?
Minnesota.
Yeah, okay, Minnesota. So they're not taking a receiver either because they have Thielen and Jefferson. So they're not going to trade up for a receiver anyway. So, yeah, I think that the Eagles' chances of having one of those receivers drop is pretty good if, again, like I said, they get past that 7th pick.
Yeah, Jimmy, one thing I like to look at, and I really tend to go back to 1999 and Andy Reid, because I think that's where sort of the Eagles thinking, the modern Eagles thinking started. And it's about offensive line, defense, obviously quarterback, but
yeah,
besides that, it goes offensive line, defensive line. And so if you look from 1999 forward and you look at the top half of the draft where the Eagles are, 16 and above, it's always been quarterback, offensive line, or defensive line. Do you think that's just a coincidence, or, that's the reason how he dropped down? Because he wasn't taking a receiver at 6, bottom line.
I think that how he's thinking on that was probably a little more simple in that my personal view of this draft is that if you're not going to take a quarterback, or you didn't think the quarterback that you wanted was going to make it to you at 6, moving back from 6 to 12, I don't think the talent level between the player that you're going to get at 6 is so much different than the player you can get at 12 that you'd pass up a first-round pick in 2022. So I think they made the right value move in moving back. Your point about offensive and defensive line is, it's certainly a great one. I mean, they clearly value the trenches. And I think the under-discussed position in terms of where the Eagles could go at 12 is defensive end. You have Kwity Paye there from Michigan, I think is probably the top guy that they would consider at that spot. I think that'd be a little bit of a reach, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all. They could go offensive line, of course, if Penei Sewell is still there. He doesn't really fit in terms of, I guess Jordan Mailata remains sort of a little a question mark, and he'll compete with Andre Dillard in training camp this year if Dillard is still on the roster. So we'll see how that goes. So, they could certainly move Mailata into sort of a swing tackle role, but I think if you draft Sewell, that's more of like a long-term play where you want that guy to be your left tackle for the next 10 years, and then you have the other 2 guys in Rashawn Slater in Northwestern and Elijah Vera Tucker in USC, who probably are better fits at guard. And that makes sense long-term if you're going to move Seumalo inside the center whenever Jason Kelsey retires, and you plug in, either one of those 2 guys at left guard. So I can see that too. Now, the reaction to that pick would
not be popular.
Furious. The fans would not want to see the Eagles take a guard who may not even start as a rookie. So I could certainly see them go trenches at the 12th pick.
Let me follow up on the trenches for both you guys. I would be as shocked, maybe even more shocked, that Devonta Smith should fall to 12. If Sewell somehow comes down to number 12, if the Bengals go wide receiver and I guess dominoes start to fall, and before you know it, people aren't taking offensive linemen, and Sewell is on the board for the Eagles at 12. If you're talking about value, I don't know that there can be a more valued player who's available to them if they go there, because as Johnny likes to say, it's in their drafting DNA that they always value the trenches. If Sewell is there and they take him, have they had conversations about what Andre Dillard would be his value would be on the open market? He was a first-round pick, a player they moved up in the first round to take, and we're only a couple of years and an injury removed from that. How much of a discount do you think the Eagles are going to have to take if they say there's no use having 3 left tackles on this roster, putting Mailata in that mix? We need to get value out of at least one of those players, and if it means trading Dillard, what kind of pick would they get in exchange for him?
Yeah, so you wouldn't trade Dillard unless you got something decent in return, because it would actually cost more to trade him than it would to just keep him cap-wise. So if they could get a 4, I mean, I'd do that. I'm not Howie Roseman, but I'd trade him for a 4, because I don't think I don't think it's there. I just don't think he's going to be a successful NFL player. So I would pull the trigger on that move, especially if I'm drafting a Penei Sewell, who's now my starting left tackle. And like I said before, I would have Jordan Mailata as my swing tackle. And then the rest of the line is, maybe the best in the NFL on paper anyway, assuming guys like Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson can come back and play the way they used to do before their injuries.
It's interesting, Jimmy, because Andre Dillard, as you know, if you go back to that draft, the Eagles didn't do a lot of work on him.
Right. Because they did more work on Sewell than they did on Dillard.
Yeah. They didn't think he'd be there. So, and then they said, oh, wow, we can get this kid. And they went up and got him.
Yeah.
And maybe they learned something from that. But Sewell, to me, is the guy, like, he might be the best positional player in this draft. He might be, you could argue Kyle Pitts, obviously, maybe Jamar Chase or Sewell. If somehow he fell to 12, I gotta run up and hand that card in and say, I just told a story before you came on about Adrian Peterson. I was in Minnesota. They had a great running back, not great, but Chester Taylor, coming off a 1,200-yard season. And I asked a personnel guy afterwards, and I told Jody the story, and he said, fuck Chester Taylor. We're allowed to curse on the stream. That's what I think a soul pick is. I'm like, I love Jordan Mailata, but Jordan Mailata.
Yeah. Jordan Mailata is still a work in progress. I'd actually looked at all the Eagles sacks allowed over the season, and off the top of my head, I think he gave up like 9 or 9.5 or something like that. Yeah, so it wasn't like he was like a star player last year.
And by the way, I would say F Andre Dillard if Kempski is ready to trade him for 4. We're only 2 years removed from them moving up in the first round to get him, and now you take a 4 just to move on from him.
I'm a glutton for punishment with Andre. He tore his biceps. I still think there's a chance. He's so athletic. I think maybe there's toughness questions, but I still think there's a chance he turns the corner. And Jimmy, at some point, and I say this about the receivers as well.
Yeah.
Where's the player development? They got to develop some of these younger players.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a new wide receiver coach every year for the past X number of years. Of course, they're returning Moorhead in his second year here with the team. So maybe some stability there will lead to better developmental results. But you're right. I mean, certainly they've spent on the position, no question, but they just haven't been able to develop these guys.
Jimmy, we noted the 2 positions you have in your mock draft for the Eagles: wide receiver first, cornerback second. And not only am I okay with the position you have for your 3rd Eagle selection, I really like the player.
Yeah.
If Michael Carter, the North Carolina running back, is there, I think he would be an outstanding pick for the Eagles. I think he's got a chance to be a real good NFL back. Probably not a bell cow back, not that any team in the league has a bell cow back these days. And the Eagles surely don't need one with Miles Sanders already here. But, yes, he does make me remember a guy by the name of Darren Sproles, who is pretty damn successful and popular in this town. A little undersized guy with tremendous joystick-like speed, making plays out of the backfield, catch the ball, open field, makes guys miss. Do you really think Carter drops down into round 3 where the Eagles could snack him up?
Yeah, I think the running back position, just generally speaking, has been devalued so much that guys tend to fall further than they used to. And in his case, like you mentioned, like he's a smaller guy. He's like a thicker build. He's 5'8", 201, I think. So I mean, it's not like he's not Donnell Pumphrey. All right, so like he does have some thickness to him, like Sproles did. And I kind of view him as sort of like a juiced up Boston Scott. Like I think he's way more talented than a Boston Scott, but gives you sort of the same kind of style of play in that He can zip through holes, but he's going to break more tackles than a guy like Boston Scott would. And I think most importantly to the Eagles, and what I think we perceive that Nick Sirianni's scheme is going to be in Philadelphia is that they're going to use the running backs heavily in the passing game. And I think he gives you that element as a receiver out of the backfield as well.
Well, Jimmy, my favorite pick, since Jody went that way, I got to go down to the 7th round. I love the punter.
Yes.
Presley. And by the way, you talk about popular. If he was here, he would be so
for
popular.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Just a massive king-size punter. The guy is huge. He can throw the football.
Yes.
He's like Johnny Hecker. I think he would be such a popular pick. And obviously, Cam Johnson is now in Houston.
Yep.
The Eagles have Aaron Cephos, but nobody knows anything about him. Exactly. I love that pick. And I wrote about him at Georgia State's Pro Day. Yeah. So he was the top punter in college football. And you know, people don't think about taking specialists, but in the 7th round, when you have extra picks,
they have 11 picks.
Yeah, why not? I love it.
Yeah, he's like 6 foot, 255. So he's like he's a chunker kind of. But
well,
yeah,
so he can. That's why I probably love it.
I think what do you have, a 48-yard punt average?
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
And it's not like he's just a guy that you know, can just blast it away. I mean, that's not what punting is even about in the NFL anymore. It's direction, it's direction, it's hang time, and it's being able to pin teams inside. I don't even know why the stat inside the 20 exists. For me, it's like inside the 10 is what matters for punters. So, but yeah, he's I think actually I don't think he's going to be there in the 7th round either. But I just kind of put him in there for fun. Just give me give me a punter competition to cover in training camp. I don't care if you draft a guy, you sign a guy as an undrafted free agent. Let me hang time in training camp this year.
There will be a punter competition. I can guarantee it. We'll see if they use a pick on it. One last thing for you, Jimmy. No, you went the quarterback route in the later rounds as well. You went Jamie Newman from Georgia, who I think in the 6th round is actually a pretty good pick and pretty good value. How cognizant are the Eagles of picking a quarterback, if they pick a quarterback, at just the right time? Where is the acceptable round? When can they do it? Because all anybody has talked about was, how dare the Eagles take a quarterback in the 2nd round after they gave Carson Wentz $100 million and the repercussions thereafter. Is that weighing on their mind at all?
It's got to be.
We can take a quarterback, but not too early. God forbid we take one too early and put pressure on Jalen Hurts. Where is that dividing line where it's acceptable to draft a quarterback without upsetting your current starting quarterback?
Day 3. So pick rounds 4 through 7. So if like I think a couple guys that make sense, like as you mentioned already. Oh man, I forget his name already. Jamie Newman.
Jamie Newman. Yeah.
And the other guy that I think might make sense if he's there in round 4 is Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. So they'd be the 2 guys that I think that you know the Eagles could sort of take a flyer on, because they do need a 3rd quarterback anyway. I mean that quarterback would be inactive on game day. They swung and missed a couple years ago on Clayton Thorson, but they always do want to draft these quarterbacks at least on day 3. I mean, last year they kind of overcompensated a little bit, but yeah, I do actually think that they will take one in this draft in the 3rd day of the draft.
You know, you bring up that overcompensation. Do you think, they're different personalities, Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts? Mm-hmm. I get the feeling, obviously we didn't get to be there as much last year, Jimmy, but I got the feeling he's not going to be a shrinking violet if they brought even if they drafted Justin Fields. I think he would have took it well and competed. Do you think the Eagles went a little bit too far in saying, whoa, we can't upset the apple cart?
I don't think they tried to not upset him, because there was the report that Ian Rappaport put up and he subsequently deleted when he said that they were trying to get up to get Zach Wilson, but they just couldn't get up far enough to get him. And then my guess is that Joe Douglas probably fired off a angry text to Ian Rappaport and said, "Yo, dude, we're trying to trade. We're still trying to trade Sam Darnold here. Why are you blowing up our spot?" So I do think that they were absolutely considering a quarterback, either at 12 or moving up or whatever. And then when they didn't think they could get the guy that they want, or excuse me, at 6, they didn't think that they'd get the guy that they wanted, they moved out. So I don't think they're worried necessarily about upsetting Jalen Hurts or whoever's in place. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you in that Jalen Hurts is he's he's got some winner energy to him in that he doesn't care what you're going to do. He's going to go out and compete and try to prove that it's his job.
Jimmy, one last one from me, and this is kind of for both of you guys, but Jimmy, you first, because you're both Eagles beat reporters. Yesterday, the Eagles released video of Coach Nick Sirianni talking about plays that they ran when he was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis and giving you background and insight and the like. And yeah, you got a personality feel for Nick Sirianni from this. Do I care how their plays worked in Indianapolis? No, that's water under the bridge. I really don't care. So you're more looking at the coach and his grasp of scheme,
right.
his personality and the like. It was, of course, released by the Eagles. Does that bother you guys when stuff like that comes out? Because it's controlled. You take it for what it's worth, and you put it through whatever filter you need to. Because if he messes it up, let's re-rack that before we send it out again. How do you guys respond when you see something like that, knowing full well you've only had limited amount of time and opportunities to get to know Nick Sirianni and be able to ask him questions?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'd love to have had that kind of segment with him too. Like my friend actually, I didn't see the whole thing. I only saw like the first 4 or 5 minutes. That's something I have to catch up on a little bit later. But like you said, you do get to kind of see his personality, and you got to see him, sort of more in his element than he was when he met with the media, when he's standing in front of a podium in front of nothing essentially, and didn't come off as, Frederick Douglass on the public speaking front. So we got to see the side of him that's sort of more in his element. And my friend Fran Duffy did that segment with him that you're talking about with the X's and O's, and I thought Fran did a really good job with that. I mean, yeah, certainly I'd like to have more time to talk about those kinds of things with the head coach, but yeah, I didn't have a problem with them running that segment, and I did think that it was a window sort of into what he is more in his element.
Yeah, and I think the X's and O's part, and Jimmy's right, Fran does a great job with the X's and O's and the scheme stuff, and I think that shows, a great insight into the new head coach that people don't know a lot about. As a beat writer, and I don't know, Jimmy can weigh in as well, when there's a press conference coming up, and whether it's, Nick Sirianni being introduced, the second one, Howie Roseman, Eagles.com will do something first, and then we'll get them the next day. That I don't necessarily love. But,
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Understood on that front. Yeah. All right, Jimmy, will there be a mock 5.0 next week? Or
no, I do 4, and then I do one like a day before the draft, and then that's it. I don't want to I see some people put out like mock draft 18.0. It's like, come on, what are you doing? So, yeah, I just do 4, which is maybe even a little overkill in itself. But and then I have like my final one where I do repeat players, like I said, the day before the draft.
I'm amazed I got through an interview with you and I didn't bring up compensatory picks. Jimmy is the king. The king of compensatory picks.
Yes. How badly did they screw up by signing Joe Flacco? I'm kind of with Johnny Mac on this one. You do get a little over the top with the compensatory pick. He needed a backup quarterback. You got to take Flacco. You got to pay Flacco. I was okay with that. He's coming in here to compete, according to Joe Flacco. Did you actually like that signing for the Eagles?
No, not even a little bit.
Compensatory picks aside, we need to clarify it first. Compensatory picks aside, just from a football backup quarterback standpoint, you didn't like the
not
signing?
Even a little bit. Not really? Even a little. No, I think they should have just signed anyone for the veteran minimum or close to it. Like I look at what the Giants did, for example. They signed Mike Glennon to like a $1.6 million contract or something like that. So I think they paid him $2 million more than they had to. Like if you're a potential Super Bowl contending team and you need a quarterback to, kind of keep the ship afloat, if your starter goes down because you think you have Super Bowl aspirations, then yeah, go ahead and go out and spend money on a backup quarterback. But in this case, a guy that's only going to be there for a year, who doesn't have like a real strong history of wanting to be sort of that mentor type, like Josh McCown made clear that he was going to be, a year or two ago. And I thought he was, I actually watched his tape from last year, his 4 starts, and it's not impressive. So like he also got paid like 1.5 million last year by the Jets.
Yeah.
And somehow his value increased like 224% from last year to this year. So I mean, it's just small. It's not a big deal. Like it's 2 million more than I think they should have paid. And I don't want to get like too bent out of shape about that, but you make enough of those moves and they're cumulative over time. And I think that's part of the reason why they kind of got in the bad cap situation that they're in now. Of course, there were bigger moves that put them in that spot than, you know, like a very minor one like this. But again, kind of just nitpicking here because it is such a small deal anyway. It's only 3.5 million, but I just don't like the logic of it.
Jimmy, good stuff. We appreciate you coming on board. You know, you're tied to both John and myself. You're stuck with us, Malton Mafia guy, and
right.
PhillyVoice.com guy. So we're going to be tapping into your expertise plenty going forward. Thanks for sharing with us today.
All right, Jody. John.
Thanks, Jim.
Jimmy Kempski from PhillyVoice.com, outstanding Eagles beat writer. Yes, we'll have Kempski on plenty as the Birds 365 show rolls on. We'll roll on with more today. Keep it right here. Jody McDonald, John McMullen, your Mac and Mac guys with Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.